All right, welcome back. Thus far, we've been working on triangles, of being able to figure out angles in triangles, just working on some of our review of geometry and trigonometry. Again, ultimately, what we're going to be looking at is answering questions about which way things are going, and we need to actually have directions for that. Now, up until this point, when we had our first unit, everything was just, north, south, east, west, up and down, because it was in one dimension. Now, because we're doing it two dimensions, sometimes our directions are in between north and east, or they're in between east and south. And so we have to be a little bit more specific about how we go about naming them. And that's kind of our goal for this video. Hopefully, I'll be able to keep it short. Hopefully, you can do a little bit of practice, and hopefully, all this makes sense to you. So we're just basically wanting to name the vector and compass directions depending on where we would draw an arrow. Don't really have any vocabulary for this one. So just quick review. Remember, if we've got northeast, south, and west, that in between east and north, we should hopefully remember that that's going to be 90 degrees. The entire circle, if we make it all the way around, ends up being 360 degrees. So again, up until this point, all of our lines have either been to the east, to the west, to the north, to the south. And so what we're going to start doing now is drawing some lines in between the north and east. And again, we want to be able to tell exactly where something is. And so it can be a little bit confusing, because if we drew a line in between the north and the east and we've measured an angle and said it was 15 degrees, that could be kind of confusing because we don't know where the 15 degrees is. Is it 15 degrees from the east, or was it 15 degrees closest to the north? And so there's a way of kind of a system for us doing this, which is to indicate the two directions we have on there, north of east or east of north. And so a lot of what we're trying to do today is just kind of understand what the heck does this whole north of east thing mean and east of north, because they're not the same thing. So I've got some rules of how to interpret that, and I'm going to go through that, and hopefully we can practice it a little bit. So just in answering the question, what's the difference between 15 degrees north of east and 15 degrees east of north? It would look like this. So on the left, 15 degrees north of east, you can see that it's a lot closer to the east, and 15 degrees east of north is a lot closer to the north. Now, from that, you might be able to figure out what the rules are with being able to do this, about which direction comes first or which direction comes last, and how to think of this. Sometimes it's helpful for me to explain it instead of saying north of east. Think of it as north from the east. So, like, the idea of from the east means we're kind of already there. So when we see these directions north of east, I want you to think of north from the east. So if we've already gone to the east, like down the compass, and we move 15 degrees north from the east, that means we're already at the east, and we're going to move towards the north by 15 degrees. Kind of a way of interpreting this is saying, I'm moving 15 degrees towards the north from the east line. So if I'm on the east line and I move 15 degrees north, I'm going to result in this segment. Whereas if it's east of north, that means I'm actually already at the north, and then I'm moving east from that. It's a little bit confusing because the first direction comes last, and then the way that we move comes first. So it just takes a little practice, like anything that we're doing in here, to kind of get used to it. So again, the northeast southwest is going to be a reference point, and then we're going to indicate how many degrees and direction we're going to then move away from that. So we'll go through some examples of this. So again, this is 15 degrees north of, in this case, it's going to be north of east, right? If we had a line over here, same kind of the mirror image, it would be 15 degrees north of west, because we would be closest to the west. So again, this last direction, in this case east, it's the direction that our line is closest to. So this line is closest to the east, and so that's my reference point. And then I say something about which way I'm moving from the east. So we get a couple more examples. Again, this is 15 east of north. So north is our reference point. It comes last, and then we're moving 15 degrees east from that reference point. So just in summary, the north tells us which way we're moving, and the east tells us which way we're moving from. This is kind of where we want to go down. So if you want to think about the coordinate system, again, this last direction is the way that you're going to move on the coordinate system or in compass, and then this first one then tells you which way to go from that Personally, I would prefer to say north from east. That makes a lot more like sense to me, but north of east is the same. So you've got these on your practice sheet, and it would be good to see if you could just sketch these out and see if you could get them correct. So instead of waiting till I get them all down and just copying them, it'd be good for you to just kind of pause your video right now and think about how to go through these. I'm going to pause in between each one of them briefly so that, if you want to go through them one at a time, you can do that. So again, if it's 30 degrees north of east, we want to start in the easterly direction and then move towards the north side. All right, so we're going to move to the east, and then our angle is going to get pushed up to the north by 30 degrees. 40 degrees south of east, I start the same way, so I'm moving to the east to begin with, but this time I'm going to move my ray to the south downward, and it's going to end up being a 40-degree angle pushed back this way. 25 degrees north of west means I'm starting in the westerly direction, and then I'm going to move my ray 25 degrees north of that. Again, notice the degree always goes with the actual angle that we're kind of moving towards when we're doing that. So I start to the west, and then I push it 25 degrees up towards the north. And then finally 30 degrees south of west. Again, I'm going to start moving to the west, and then my angle ends up being 30 degrees south of that. And so it's going to be in the downward southwest direction. So we can't just say southwest, northwest, southeast, northeast, because there's all kinds of, angles that you could have that could be considered northeast. And this is a way for us to be as specific as possible. Okay. So take a moment, if you will. Hopefully you can practice these, A, B, C, D, E. And we want to say for each one of them, again, like if for B, we would say it's 20 degrees, what of what? 30 degrees, what of what? 45 degrees, what of what? We need a couple of directions that are in there. Should be able to check your work. You should have a practice assessment after this just to get a little bit more practice. And then what our next step is to take everything that we've done this week with triangles and these directions and actually put them into practice with vectors and word problems. So hopefully we can solve triangles. Hopefully we know our directions, and hopefully this can allow us to answer some questions by putting angles and directions together to get some things correct.